بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا رب العالمين. Ya Allah, teach us that which is beneficial for us, and Ya Allah, help us to benefit from everything you have taught us and increase us in knowledge. And we also say the dua of the angels when they told Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. Ya Allah, glory be to you, Ya Allah. There is no knowledge for us except what you, Ya Allah, have taught us. You are the one who's all-knowing. You are the one who's full of wisdom and all-wise. So we are continuing our discussion about the 5-day habit challenge. Yesterday, we had our first challenge, which was basically about debunking the myth of willpower, proving the idea or disproving the idea that willpower is important or motivation is important. Yes, we need motivation. Yes, we need willpower. But that motivation is the spark that should initiate change and that should initiate you trying to purify yourself and fight your temptation. But as we said yesterday, willpower is a limited muscle. There's only a few ounces of willpower you can get on a day-to-day basis. So if you deplete them, if you only rely on them, you will fail miserably. And that's why many of us could use those Instagram pictures or motivational quotes or short reels to drive us and push us. But then we realize that, hey, I'm not being pushed enough. I don't have this motivation to improve my being or improve my workout or eat healthy, all that stuff. Well, because if you rely on willpower, you are relying on a very finite resource. We gave the example yesterday of the battery that is on 10% charge. That battery, you cannot do a lot on it. So we have a short reliance. We should have short reliance on our willpower and motivation. We said yesterday we should have more reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But even when it comes to our own human effort, we have to think, to have to work smart, not hard. And this is what today, inshallah ta'ala, we will dive in details to talk about the systems. The importance of having a system. The importance of us trying to build a system around what we want to change and not rely only on willpower. Here is the question. What do we mean by a system? What do you guys think? When we say the word system, like you need to build a system about something if you want to really change. What do you think we are referring to?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الدين. حياكم الله.
A methodology, an order and a structure in which you do things in a certain order to get a particular result.
Nice. That's a good definition. Can you give us examples? What's an example of a system?
Seeking knowledge. Seeking knowledge. There's an order and a structure in which we do it. So you Quran, then Sunnah, and then you branch off thereafter.
Okay, nice. So if somebody wants to seek knowledge, it's not enough to be a random wanderer in the online space to try to get information here and there. You would want to have a system in the way you absorb and get knowledge, right? So, for example, you start with chapter 1, then chapter 2, then chapter 3. You take some notes, you highlight whatever notes you take. This is kind of a system, right? That's as simple as it gets. A system is basically everything that you try to do to make somebody is saying, Abdul Ahad, system means that the environment and everything that will help us to do something. Exactly. So basically, a system is when you try to delegate the task to something around you. If you think about it, for example, the 5 daily prayers. Let's take a super simple example. The 5 daily prayers. What is the system that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted us to have in place so that we can ensure that we're praying on time, so that we can ensure that we're praying with khushu', with submission, so that we can make sure that this obligation, the most important obligation in Islam, is not some wishy-washy, task without a structure, without a system. What do you guys think? So what are the elements? So when we talk about system, I wanted to think about a factory. You know, these factories where the assembly line, when I used to work at Ford Motor Company, I worked there for 10 years. We used to pride ourselves that we have in the assembly line, which is a huge factory, full of machines, robots, workers. You have, machinery. You have lasers, laser pointers. You have all of these crazy elements. And when the factory is going well, it doesn't always go well. There's always breakdowns and stuff. When the factory is going well, a car gets out of the factory every 53 seconds. Let that sink in. 53 seconds, less than a minute. And you have a car, a whole complete car that gets out with all the glass, with all the machines, with everything else. This is crazy. This is mind-boggling. So the idea is that this car that gets out every 53 seconds does not happen randomly. There is thousands of engineers who work around the clock 3 years before that car gets out of the factory, and they all work together and they are in sync. And when they're out of sync, the company loses millions of dollars per minute because the system is not working, subhanallah. So yeah. Okay, so I'm asking about us being more efficient in the way we do things if we start to think in systems. If we build a system around the habit that we want to change and not rely on willpower. So again, back to the example of the 5 daily prayers. What are the systems that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put for us in our daily lives so that we can use to make our 5 daily prayers more effective? What do you guys think? Bismillah. Come on. Feel free to unmute yourself. Feel free to...
The night. In one of the ayahs in the Quran, he said he created the night for rest.
Beautiful. The night and the day are basically part of the system. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala... وهو الذي جعل الليل والنهار خلفة لمن أراد أن يذكر أو أراد شكورا. So the night and the day come together basically and they create the 5 daily prayers. What are other elements in Islam that are important for us? And if you live in a Muslim country, you will appreciate this more than if you live in a non-Muslim country. But we have it in our alarm clocks. We have something that starts with an A. Come on.
Athan.
Athan, exactly, thank you. So the Athan is a system. The Adhan is meant to be, hey, 5 daily prayers, somebody who calls to prayer, or we have it on our phone. And if you don't live in a Muslim land and you don't hear the Adhan, my advice is to buy an Adhan clock. And let it announce the Adhan in your house, and let your kids and let yourself and let your soul and let your heart hear the word Allahu Akbar 5 times, subhanallah. The Adhan is part of the system because this is an external reminder, external anchor in the day that reminds us, hey, Allahu Akbar, Allah is great, Allah is great. The wudu, thank you, Aziza. The wudu is also part of the system. So if you are, that's why it's recommended even, it's a sunnah, even if you have wudu, to repeat your wudu again before the salah. Why? Because, subhanAllah, it really, it's part of the system, it prepares you. The set prayer time, the set prayer area, subhanallah. When you remember that this prayer area is also part of what you have, like it's going to testify for you when you end. So when we talk about building systems around us, we are trying to understand my willpower is weak. My willpower alone will not help me build the habit that I want to build. However, I need external factors, similar to wudu, similar to the adhan, similar to the prayer rug, similar to the companionship. Where are the men in the audience? Hey, men. Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said, La salata li jari al-masjidi illa bihi. Those who are neighbors to the masjid, their prayer, he's encouraging us, and the language of the hadith, there is no prayer that's accepted from the neighbor of the masjid except inside the masjid. And this is encouragement that for men, it's almost an obligation. Some scholars mention it's an obligation for men to pray in the masjid. Women, you guys, you can make jama'ah at home. And whether you pray at home or in the masjid, the importance of praying in jama'ah is part of the system. And if you think about it, the idea that Muslims are organized, shoulder to shoulder, foot to foot, Allahu Akbar, they all follow the Imam, they listen to the commands of others. When we are connected, like in the Salat, it's about time that we get connected in our hearts. And it's about time that we are connected as a community in the politics, in the battlefield. Allah says in the Quran, إن الله يحب الذين يقاتلون في سبيله صفا كأنهم بنيان مرصوص. Allah loves those who fight in His way and they are in rows as if they are part of a complete building, complete structure. Subhanallah. So that's all part of the system. But let me tell you something that's really mind-boggling. When you think about the other system that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created in the universe, let me share with you again, part of the day and night system that Allah has created. Let me share with you these beautiful ayat. Where is, these ayat in Surah Yasin. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون. And there's a sign to them, the night, we strip the day from it. Then they are in darkness. It's telling us that the night comes before the day. Then Allah says, وَالشَّمْسُ تَجْرِي لِمُسْتَقَرٍّ لَهَا ذَلِكَ تَقْدِيرُ الْعَزِيزِ الْعَلِيمِ. The sun travels for its fixed term. This is the design, the calculations, the exact extreme determination of the Almighty, all-knowing Allah. وَالْقَمَرَ قَدَّرْنَاهُ مَنَازِلَ حَتَّى عَادَ كَالْعُرْجُونِ الْقَدِيمِ. And the moon, we have ordained precise phases for it until it ends up looking, and Allah is referring to the shape of the crescent, looking like an old curved palm stalk. If you see like the palm tree, whenever the leaves of the tree, when they fall down and they start wrapping around each other, they become like this, the shape of the moon. And then Allah tells us, look at the system that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created in this universe. Extreme calculation. Every creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows its place. Every creation does not go out of balance, does not go out of order. Allah says, لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون. It does not befit the sun to catch up with the moon, nor the night outrun the day. Each is traveling in an orbit of their own. So, any reflections on these ayat and the exact perfect system that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created in this universe? Any comments?
Just how everything is worshipping Him and is executing everything to its highest standard in its perfect form.
Beautiful, beautiful. Everything that Allah has created. By the way, if you can bring up the camera on, just present your whole self with us. Again, no, we're not forcing it on anyone, but it really makes a big difference. You can connect with us this way. So every creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has its own orbit, has its own purpose. As Maryam mentioned, everything that Allah has created knows the purpose of its creation. We as human beings were given the freedom of choice, the free will. I know we talked about free will yesterday. We as human beings, we have the free will, and we can choose to worship or not worship. But the more we worship Allah in a closer way to the system that Allah has created, the more that we are in sync, we act like everything else. Hopefully, wallahi, things will be much easier for us, subhanallah. What are some examples of, Maryam Deen?
Sorry. تدبر القرآن عين ضيق, because you can just, it's a vast ocean, you can just keep swimming and swimming in it, and you can still pull out so many different, a million people can read it, and it will hit them differently. Allah will have fashioned the meaning to enter their soul differently than it is for us. But the only other comment I want to make based on the subject that we're talking about is the fact that in the Quran, when he talks about the creation, and how, like you said, for example, in this instance, everything that is in sync is playing is doing its job. It's glorified. He praises it in such a way, and so he holds it to the highest esteem. Anything that has an order and a structure and is disciplined, he doesn't take light of it. It's loved deeply by him.
La ilaha illallah. Subhanallah. Yeah. Beautiful reflection. Jazakumullah khair. Everything that basically follows the orbit that Allah has ordained for it, subhanallah, it becomes part of the creation that worship Allah. And if I understand, if I want to add to this, or kind of add to what you said, we as human beings, when we are worshiping Allah, when we are in sujood, when we are in ruku', when we fulfill our purpose, then we become like all the elements of the universe. We become like slaves of the Almighty subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we understood that Allah has placed some systems in the universe. There are systems inside us that we don't feel, we're not aware of. Our heart rate, our breathing, our hair grows on its own, our eyes blink on their own. There's all of these systems that Allah has created. So how does that relate to the idea of habits and habit change and behavior change? We need to include some systems in our lives, and I'll give you some notes now without details. Again, details will come later. I'll give you some hints on what systems to include in your life to make your life better. The first thing that you need as a system is your calendar. Every productive Muslim should start using a calendar. A calendar is a system because, like the Athan, the Adhan, the beauty of the Adhan, it reminds you whether you are aware or you are heedless or you are sleeping or you're busy, Allah Akbar comes. So you are more likely to pray on time if you hear the Adhan, right? Just imagine, I want you to give me, you guys here, imagine, rate, I don't know what time is it in your locality. Now here in Beirut, it's time for Asr. I wanted to rate how easy for me to do the Salat al-Asr from 1 to 10. Maybe it's a 5, right? And I wanted to say, write down in the chat, without Adhan, my rating, I think I will be 5 out of 10 likely to do Salat. And then rate the same act after hearing the Adhan. Maybe I'm a 5 out of 10 to pray Asr. Then maybe if I hear the Adhan, maybe it's 7 out of 10. Maybe it's 8 out of 10. Maybe it's 10 out of 10 for some of us. So the same thing I wanted to write down. Any volunteers other than Maryam? MashaAllah, Maryam, she's been great with us. Appreciate all the energy and all the comments. I want some other people, inshallah ta'ala, to step up, either on chat or unmute yourself. How easy is it for us to pray on time, Salat al-Asr, without the Adhan and without anyone reminding you? And then I wanted to add the following systems, right? So let's say it's 5 out of 10. And then if you add Adhan, then if you add Jama'ah, like there's a congregation. So you are, let's say, in the workplace, and I remember when we are in a company and you have more people praying Jama'ah, and they look at you in the eyes and say, Muhammad, come on. Like, imagine somebody giving you that look. Hey, you want to pray with us or not? So technically, being in the right companionship is another system. And then imagine blocking time for Salat. So I'm trying to give you short systems that you can do, and wallahi, these short systems will make a big difference. If you block time for Salat, imagine what's going to happen. And this will introduce me, and this will allow us to talk about another system that I shared with some of you in a previous call. I'm not sure if this was this this group or something else. It's an app called the Prayer Cal. Prayer Cal. I'm sharing the message here in the chat. It's an app called Prayer Cal. Let me share my window and show you what the Prayer Cal app does. So what the Prayer Cal app does for all of us is it integrates the system of the 5 daily prayer into your actual calendar. So again, as we said, the calendar is a must-have. If you are not used to use a calendar as a system, I strongly recommend that you put appointments, meetings, reminders. You want to call your mom every day, every other day. If you want to block time to read a book or read Quran, block time on your calendar. Wallahi, makes a big difference. So the Prayer Cal app is basically, it will tell the time of the salat in your locality, Fajr, Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib, Isha, and it will help you make sure that if you are scheduled to do a meeting, you schedule it between, for example, Dhuhr and Asr, between Asr and Maghrib. And this is a short hack, small hack that I recently started using in my calendar. I'll show you my calendar in a bit. And it made a big difference, subhanAllah. Let me just show really quick my calendar. Sharifat is actually adding no reminder 5 out of 10. Thank you for sharing that and being honest. If there's an Athan, it's a 7 out of 10. There's a Jama'ah, 9 or 10 or 9 out of 10. Thank you so much for sharing. So what I want to, Sharifa, what I wanted to do right now, look at my calendar, maybe some personal stuff out there, but I don't care. I have the 5 daily prayers. So look at, for example, some other, like this is in the future, in June. So in June, let's say I want to schedule a coaching call with someone. Then I know, for example, that this coaching call has to be between Asr and Maghrib, because Asr is at 4:23 and it will take me around 15 minutes. So you can tell here I have a meeting that conflicts with my salat timing. Now, maybe it's not a requirement, it's not a fard to pray salat on time. Sorry, on the beginning of the time, I can delay it maybe half an hour. But what I'm doing sometimes is even inside the coaching call, I tell the group that, hey, I need to take a step back, pray for 10 minutes and then come back. And wallahi, the idea here is that the calendar by itself is a system. The, what do you call it? The salat is a system. Having a to-do list is a system. Having a to-do list, ya jama'ah, if you are trying to remember everything that you need to do in your own brain, then guess what? You are setting yourself up for failure. We're trying to add so much information overload to our brains who are limited in capacity and we have limited willpower. So please start using, what do you call it? Start using to-do list apps. One quick recommendation I like to use is Google Keep. Let me show you really quick. Man, some of these could be private. Maybe I can show you the my password, which would, maybe you guys can steal my money or something, but I don't care. So I'm using Google Keep. As I'm using it, I use it for 2 things. First of all, Google keep.google.com. I use it for everything that has to do with quick notes. So creating a note in Google Keep is super easy. For example, here this is Fiqh al-Nafs. You know, this is a course I'm taking. And if I want to put a quick YouTube video to watch it later, here it is. This is a quick note that I was writing, preparing for a lecture. Sometimes I have tasks. You know, these are some to-do lists that I wanted to do. And then when I'm done, I just check it done. See, these are all the completed items I did. That was back in February. So this is a system. It's not a perfect system, but hey, no system is meant to be perfect. What I'm trying to do here is that Whenever I remember something random, I would write it here. And again, when I search, I always can find it. So I can find it quickly. So for example, this is one of the tools I use in the coaching called annual review sheet. So I can easily find it. And there you go. I can find it quickly and send it to clients and send people the link to find this video. This is a video by Brother Muhammad Faris. So guess what? Without this system, if these information, sorry, Brother Muhammad, I love you, but you guys got the point. I was able to find information relatively quickly, within seconds, simply because I'm using Google Keep as a system, in addition to the calendar, in addition to the prayer area, prayer reminders and that stuff. Now, I'm not claiming that my system is perfect. There's so many flaws into it. I can keep telling you that my system is all over the place. But the idea is that the inbox, using our inbox and our email as a way to store information is a very bad idea. Because the email is not meant to be a system to store information. You just want to use something else, such as Google Keep is an example. There is a book that we talk about it in the Productivity Masterclass called Building a Second Brain. Building a Second Brain, that talks basically about the note-taking system. How do you prepare your notes? How do you store your notes? How, if your brain, if your mind is like a storage area, a big basement, a big warehouse, how can you store information in a way so that you can recall it? Subhanallah. So that's also part of, it needs a system. What do you mean by system? As we defined, and mashallah, Maryam did a great job defining a system. It's a set of rules like the sun and the moon. You know how when Allah talked about the sun and the moon, Allah said, لَلشَّمْسُ يَنْبَغِي لَهَا أَن تُدْرِكَ الْقَمَرَ وَلَا اللَّيْلُ سَابِقُ النَّهَارِ. The sun cannot outrun the moon. The night cannot outrun the day. Each one has its orbit and they work perfectly with each other with no, subhanallah, with flawless activity. And the idea of the system that you need to build for your life, for your note-taking, for your knowledge, for your activity, for your calendar, for your to-do list, you would want to build a system. That system will make building habits and new habits and behavior much easier, subhanallah. Afshan, mashallah, that's amazing. Thank you, Afshan. Sharifat, I have the prayer call, but I found that some of the timings are not aligned with the UK, but it's still very helpful. You may want to tweak it, so that it works, or send them an email. Send them an email and please give them that information. Okay. Oh, Hafsat, sorry, I missed your message. I used to sleep 3 to 4, but when time is just to wake up because I make my intention. Yeah, are you referring to waking up for Fajr, you mean? Maybe. Okay. Maryam Ad-Din. Asr. For Asr, subhanallah. Yeah, that makes sense. It will be a lot of trial and a lot of error, but the good will stick. Then you try again. Along the way, you create a solid program, system, habitual state, 100%. So the idea about the system is it doesn't have to be perfect, but you just have to try as much as possible to create a system around the habits. Let me recommend really some quick books for you guys in order to think about systems, to think about ways to organize yourself better. Inshallah, again, in the course, in the Productive Muslim course, which start next week, inshallah ta'ala, we'll dive into more details on this. There's a book called The Checklist Manifesto. The Checklist Manifesto. It tells about the importance of having checklists for almost everything you do, so that you don't forget. Again, don't rely on your short-term, on your limited memory. And it talks about these pilots and airplane, in the airplane, and how they have a huge checklist. How can they make sure that the scheduled maintenance is done properly? There's lives on the line. If they forget, item number 11C from the manual, if they don't check everything, if they don't test everything. So there's a huge amount of sophisticated systems that will remind people, in a checklist. So have a checklist, for example, before you go to bed. checklist if you are traveling, checklist to take care of a new baby, checklist to attend a lecture and how to take notes. This checklist manifesto is something super important in our days. The other recommendation I had is called building a second brain. Building a second brain. This is a must-read book for all the students of knowledge. Everyone who's trying to capture information that they are taking so that they teach it to others or keep it to themselves, you would want a way to store all of that knowledge. And building a second brain is a solid way of doing that. Another book, it's called Getting Things Done. Getting Things Done. It's an old book, maybe early 2000, but it's a good book in order to get all the tasks that you are getting, and organize them, and organize the task and whatever comes to mind in a way that will basically make your activity and day-to-day work more beneficial, inshallah. So what else? Getting Things Done, Checklist Manifesto. Yeah, there's a lot of books I'm going to share actually, let me write them down here. Getting Things Done, Checklist Manifesto, Building a Second Brain. Okay. Yeah. And the last thing that I would like to add is the idea of morning routines and evening routines. Morning routines and evening routines. So basically, I wanted to think about routines. We'll talk about routines later in this 5-day challenge. The idea of routines is to, like a habit or an action or a behavior is like a song. It's like a track, a music track or a Quran track. And the routine is like a playlist. So the playlist has multiple tracks inside it. And a routine is a set of habits that you try to do all together. You do what we call habit stacking. And one easy way to create a system around a habit that you try to build is to simply try to include that new habit into a routine that already exists. Let's say you wake up in the morning and you wash your face, you make wudu, you use the bathroom, you take a shower. And then let's say you brush your teeth and you want to add something such as floss your teeth. Guess what? The easiest ways to add flossing your teeth is to add this track, this new this new habit to an already existing routine. This will make things much easier, subhanAllah. And that's what they call habit stacking. Afshan is asking, I have a daily checklist, but I haven't finished it because I don't hold myself accountable. So I was thinking of paying my daughter $2 a day to show her that I did it. You mean pay your daughter so that she does the habit, or so that you pay her to do the habit for you? Or maybe have checks? Yeah, so the idea here is to try to deal with it. I mean, consider, when you play video games, let's say you're playing Mario, and I like video games, and I like to think about life as a game that I cannot lose. But guess what? All of these attempts at improving, at changing, even if I fail one day, alhamdulillah, I get better and better. We don't have to think about massive changes. Maybe this is my advice to Afshan, is to not think about massive changes into my routine or habits, but just talk about small habits, small changes. And that's what we'll talk about in the lecture about habits. So instead of saying, I want to floss my teeth, you just tell yourself, I want to floss one tooth only. And you do it. You floss one tooth and khalas. Good job. Again, you would want to program your brain to enjoy doing small things at a time so that you can enforce it. Mariam, you had a comment?
I wanted to just ask a question in terms of when you make, because it's something that I do, checklists. I do it for almost everything. But what do you do? I find that I overwhelm myself when, say, the day is gone and I have not completed everything on it. I carry things over, and then the checklist for the following day is slightly bigger. And sometimes when this happens after a couple of days, because we plan, but then Allah plans, right? And
Now,
sometimes you can have your plans, and Qadar, alhamdulillah, it helps ease the
now,
blow. However, sometimes they don't go according to plan, and a couple of days have passed, and I find that I don't know, I don't feel comfortable letting them go and not carrying them over. Is that bad what I do, or is it?
now, subhanallah. So again, subhanallah, this that's why I love the productive Muslim material, and I strongly recommend you guys take the course with me or with any other instructor. The idea of we think about tasks as intentions, not as a to-do list. So, Maryam, when you wake up in the morning and you intend to read 5 pages in the Quran, let's say you read 3, and what happens to the other 2? If you had the sincere intention to read 5, but then, as you said, the qadr of Allah came, you had to attend to some family member, there are things going on, you got late. Guess what? You get rewarded for the 5. Move on. That's why my teacher teaches us that, like, if you have a daily dose of the Quran and you read 5 and you read only 3, the next day, that's my teacher's advice. You don't have to stick to it. The next day, don't try to read the remaining 2 and then you do other 5, because that's 7. What happens if you miss the next day, the third day, you have 5 plus 5 plus 2, that's like 12. It keeps on accumulating. And what happens? You stop reading the Quran because it gets overwhelming. So I wanted to think about your daily routines as intentions, not as to-do lists. The to-do list, this fixated mindset of I need to check the boxes and everything, this is what we call the hustle culture. The hustle culture mindset where, you know, people are like going to the gym and they have to do reps and they have to do certain sets, and it's fixated. It doesn't take into account that we are human beings and we're not robots. You know, things come up in life. We call this also in our productive Muslim jargon the gardener mindset, where you try to plant the seeds for success, not the carpenter mindset, where you try to build a very fixated, item like a carpenter. So the idea of being a gardener, not a carpenter, and let me actually share gardener mindset, productive Muslim, how to set goals like a gardener. I'm going to share this article with you guys. And basically what this article is trying to teach us is, hey, take it easy on yourself. Have intentions, don't have to-do lists. Because it makes, ideally, the productive Muslim should feel less stressed out. Because you know that you have intentions. Now, intentions does not mean wishful thinking. Does not mean I am daydreaming about doing that activity. No, intention means you are sincere about it, and you start doing it. You don't finish it, qadar Allah, it's okay, move on. Next day, I try to do better. It's the idea about constancy, not consistency. That's something we'll talk about in the Tiny Habits session, which is, I think, the day after tomorrow. So I hope that this makes sense. It's really, ya jama'ah, productive Muslims who are trying to achieve above and beyond their, what do you call it? Their own self, and they want to achieve higher goals. We need to understand that there are laws that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put in the universe. That sometimes it's not about working harder, it's about working smarter. And so a system for us is a checklist, yes, that's good, but also not dying and making this checklist a very robotic checklist. And understanding that you are rewarded, because if you have written this task down, inshallah, Allah will reward you for it. And if you start finishing it, but you didn't finish it, that's fine, inshallah. And again, I'm assuming, I'm not giving us a free pass not to finish the 5 daily prayers. Of course, the 5 daily prayers, non-negotiable. The fara'id, calling our moms, doing the basic duties. But everything extra, we should really have mercy on ourselves, subhanallah. This is an excellent question. Inshallah ta'ala, inshallah, in the remaining part of the 5-day challenge and in the course, we'll dive deeper into what does it mean to get something done. Because again, I know I recommended 3 books that are from the hustle culture, from non-Muslim resources, and we have a lot to learn from them. But really, we have our own identity, we have our own definition of what does it mean when we say something is done. Allah Alam. Mariam, you have a comment?
Yeah, I just want to say Jazakallah khairan for sharing that. It's nice to have a reminder that when you set a sincere intention, you still get the reward for it. And I think it just as a point to add on to what you said, just as a quick reflection point based off what you said, it's if it's something that is persistent in that you cannot achieve it daily, then maybe it gives you an indication to be realistic, knock it down a little bit. And if it's still consistent in that you're not achieving it, then maybe reassess how sincere is your intention. But yeah, it gives an all around look. It
Now,
helps. Jazakallah khairan.
Allah barakallahu fikum. And again, we should avoid and fight the perfectionist mindset. Many of us have it. Again, we're bombarded with a lot of information and marketing material that really makes us like Superman, and you'll never miss a day at the gym and other stuff. And that's dangerous. We're human beings. Somebody shared this ayah yesterday. وَخُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ ضَعِيفًا. Man were created to be weak, and we should accept it. Part of our submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to accept this weakness that Allah has placed in us. Subhanallah. Abdul Ahad, I read many books like Atomic Habits, but I cannot work on that. I have information, but I cannot implement it. So let me be merciful with you, Ya Abdul Ahad. First of all, you did benefit from Atomic Habits, and there's something inside your mind that changed because of that, and you definitely benefited. Now, how is that benefit? Did it accumulate? This is where the difference between information versus transformation. Information, again, is when you put more data, more books, more files in that warehouse called our minds and brains. But transformation required more working together. And this is where the importance of live cohorts and group coaching and mentorship and teaching, because there's so much information out there, as we said yesterday and today. But really, sometimes you need to slow down and try to take the information in a way that will, inshallah, ensure more implementation and transformation of that knowledge. We as human beings, we are not information takers. We are not cloud storage devices. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the Quran on the Muslim community, He didn't give it to us like download it into our brains and hearts. He gave us a walking example of the Quran, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was the teacher. He taught us the Quran by example and by information. So let's not be harsh on ourselves. Yes, we have information, but we need an extra step, inshallah. I have to excuse myself because I need to pray Asr and prepare for my next session, inshallah ta'ala. But thank you so much. Jazakumullah khair. May Allah reward all of you for being with us for the second session. Inshallah ta'ala, in the third session, we will continue our 5-day challenge bi'idhnillah, and we'll be talking about the other habits that we need to work on so that inshallah ta'ala tomorrow. So we mentioned why willpower is overrated. Don't rely on willpower. We talked about building systems and routines today. We mentioned many examples of systems and routines, such as, please write them down, calendars, checklists, the Athan being around us, all these systems and routines. We talked about system for taking notes, system for retrieving notes. There's so many apps for this. I mentioned Google Keep, but there's so many other systems, inshallah ta'ala. Number 3 will be the environment hacks. How can we hack the environment so that the environment around us will push us towards the behavior that we want to change? Such as, for example, if I'm praying Jama'ah next to someone else. This is a quick example of the environment hacks. Inshallah, tomorrow we'll dive about it in detail, inshallah. Jazakumullah khair. Please, Jama'ah, tomorrow try to invite someone else with you to these classes. Try to get the reward again, and there's a system for this. Think about, hey, who among my friends would benefit from this? Maybe I can. One of the ways to create a system is, hey, let me get an accountability partner, someone else who's going to watch the material with me, and both of us can work on this habit. Whether this habit is memorizing the Quran, praying on time, going to the gym, what have you. So that's one quick way. Try to invite someone else. Imagine the barakah, the reward, the ajr, if more people, inshallah ta'ala, join. And these people are people that you know personally, and they can work with you on building better systems, inshallah. Yalla, see you guys tomorrow. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.